Have you ever wondered if your habits could be quietly pushing people away as you get older? It's something we don't often think about, but as we age, certain behaviors can start isolating us without us even realizing it. From the way we communicate to how we take care of ourselves, these small actions can have a huge impact on our relationships and quality of life. In this article, we're going to uncover 12 habits that might be sabotaging your relationships and happiness, things that many people don't even know they're doing. But here's the good news. Once you're aware of these habits, you can start making positive changes that will lead to a more fulfilling, connected life. Whether it's complaining too much, resisting new technology, or neglecting your appearance, these habits can leave you feeling lonely and disconnected. By the end of this article, you'll know exactly how to reverse these behaviors and build stronger relationships, improve your self-esteem, and live with more joy and purpose. I'll be sharing actionable tips that you can start using right now to transform your daily life. Stick with me to the end for the most surprising and impactful change you can make. You don't want to miss number 7, as it's the one that catches everyone off guard, and by the time most realize it, it's already too late to fix. So, if you're ready to reclaim your happiness and your relationships, let's dive in. If you enjoy this article, please share it with others who might benefit. Your support means a lot to me, and it helps spread these valuable lessons to those who need them. Now, let's begin. Number 9. Talking down to younger generations. Sarah adored her grandson, Max. She had watched him grow from a curious, energetic child into a thoughtful young adult. She looked forward to his visits, but lately their time together had started to feel awkward. He used to tell her all about school, his friends, and his favorite video games, but now their conversations were strained, almost as if a wall had slowly been built between them. One day, Max mentioned a new app he had downloaded, his eyes lighting up as he talked about it. Sarah sighed, her heart heavy with nostalgia. "Back in my day, we didn't need all this technology," she said, a tinge of judgment in her voice. "We played outside. Kids these days are always staring at screens instead of getting fresh air." Max fell silent. Sarah watched as he glanced at his phone and shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I should probably get going," he mumbled. As the tartar clicked shut behind him, Sarah felt a sharp pang in her chest. What had she done? She hadn't meant to push him away, but had she? Was she making him feel like his interests didn't matter? Had her words created a divide between them that was hard to repair? Why this pushes younger generations away? It's natural to look back on the past and compare it to the present. We see how much things have changed, and sometimes we feel the urge to remind younger generations of how things used to be. But constantly, telling younger people that their way of life is inferior to ours only makes them feel dismissed, criticized, and misunderstood. Instead of building a bridge of connection, it creates distance. Every generation faces different challenges, different opportunities, and different ways of interacting with the world. We may not always understand it, but that doesn't mean we should belittle it. Connection thrives when we encourage, support, and engage with others, not when we criticize them for being different. How to change the habit: be curious, not dismissive. When a younger person shares something with you, instead of saying, "We never had that in my day," try responding with, "That sounds interesting. Tell me more about it." Be open to learning about their experiences, their interests, and their passions. Ask questions. Share your own stories in a way that acknowledges and respects their perspective rather than belittling it. Our words have the power to inspire, and when we support younger generations, we create a space for them to thrive. The next time Max visited, Sarah decided to try something different. When he brought up his favorite game, instead of dismissing it, she smiled warmly and asked, "What do you like about it?" Max lit up, his excitement shining through as he explained the strategy behind the game. For the first time in a while, their conversation flowed easily, and Sarah realized that it wasn't about trying to change him. It was about understanding him. It was about appreciating the things that made him who he was and celebrating the unique way he experienced the world. Number 10. Holding on to grudges and regrets, Sarah sat by the window, staring at the falling leaves outside. The crisp air of the approaching holiday season should have filled her with excitement, but instead, her heart felt heavy. The familiar ache of old wounds resurfaced, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the past. She thought of the friend who had betrayed her years ago, the argument with her sister that was never resolved, and the dream she had let slip away. The regrets, the missed opportunities, and the broken relationships felt like a weight she couldn't escape. The past was like a song on an endless loop, replaying in her mind with painful precision. One day, as Sarah stood in her kitchen, lost in thought, her neighbor Maya noticed her distant gaze. With her usual warmth, Maya approached and gently asked, "What's on your mind, Sarah?" Sarah sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping as the floodgates opened. "I just keep thinking about things I can't change," she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. "All those mistakes, all those people I can't forgive." Maya, wise in her years, smiled gently and said, "Holding on to the past is like carrying a heavy suitcase everywhere you go. Imagine how much lighter you'd feel if you just set it down." Sarah paused, letting Maya's words sink in. She knew Maya was right, but letting go wasn't as easy as simply deciding to forget. The past had shaped who Sarah was today, and the idea of releasing it felt both freeing and terrifying. Why holding on to grudges and regrets is harmful? Holding on to grudges and regrets doesn't just keep us emotionally trapped in the past, it steals our joy in the present. Every time we dwell on old wounds, we create an emotional barrier between us and the people we love. The bitterness we carry can unknowingly seep into our relationships, making us distant, irritable, and closed off. The weight of unresolved issues becomes a part of our daily lives, draining our energy and joy. But beyond the emotional toll, carrying grudges affects our physical health too. The stress from unresolved anger or regret can raise blood pressure, disrupt our sleep, and even compromise our immune system. It's a silent burden that only becomes heavier with time. Sarah had spent so many years letting the past dictate her emotional state, and the toll was beginning to show, not just in her relationships but in her health too. How to let go and find emotional freedom. Sarah realized the first step was to accept that the past was beyond her control. She could no longer change what had happened, but she could change how it impacted her today. Instead of focusing on the why of her past pain, Sarah began asking herself, "What can I learn from this?" That shift in perspective didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave her the power to reframe it. Sarah decided to forgive, not for the sake of the people who had wronged her, but for herself. She had been carrying their mistakes, their betrayals, and their hurt for far too long. Letting go of that weight wasn't excusing bad behavior. It was freeing herself from the hold it had on her. Sarah took another piece of advice from Maya. Write it down, then let it go. So one quiet evening, Sarah sat at her desk with a pen and paper. She wrote down every painful memory, every regret, every person she was angry with. As the ink filled the page, she felt a release, a softening in her heart. When she finished, she took the paper and with a deep breath tore it up. She let the scraps fall to the floor, symbolizing her willingness to finally let go. For the first time in years, Sarah felt lighter. The past no longer had its claws in her. She realized she didn't have to carry the burden of old wounds anymore. She could choose to be free. Number 11. Ignoring health problems. Sarah had always been a woman of action, a doer. For years, she had put the needs of everyone else before her own, and in doing so had learned to ignore her discomforts. When she started feeling dizzy after standing up or noticed that her vision was getting blurry, she brushed it off. "It's just part of getting older," she told herself. She chalked it up to the usual aches and pains of aging, not realizing how dangerous that mindset could be. Sarah had always prided herself on her independence, so admitting that something was wrong with her health felt like a weakness. One morning, as she reached for her coffee mug in the kitchen, the dizziness hit her harder than usual. This time, she lost her balance and stumbled, crashing to the floor. Pain shot through her hip, and panic gripped her heart. She tried to move, but something wasn't right. The room spun around her and fear started to take hold. Her mind raced. What had just happened? Was this the beginning of something worse? Hours later at the hospital, the doctor gave Sarah the news. "Sarah, this could have been prevented if we had caught the issue earlier." The word stung, and Sarah felt a deep sense of regret. She had ignored the signs, small, subtle warnings that something was wrong with her body. She had refused to listen, to seek help, because she thought she could manage it all on her own. But now the consequences were impossible to ignore. Why ignoring health problems is dangerous. When we ignore our health, we are only making things worse. Small symptoms like dizziness, fatigue, or shortness of breath may seem minor, but they can be signs of something far more serious. By putting off checkups, we risk missing early warnings that could prevent major health issues down the line. In Sarah's case, the dizziness could have been a sign of something much more serious, a stroke, dehydration, or a heart condition. Had she acted sooner, she might have avoided the fall that led to her injury. Delaying medical attention often results in bigger, more complicated problems. Prevention is always easier than crisis management, and Sarah had learned this the hard way. She knew now that health was something to be proactive about, not something to ignore until it was too late. How to stay on top of your health. Sarah made a promise to herself. No more ignoring the small signs, no more waiting for things to get worse before taking action. She scheduled regular checkups and committed to staying on top of her health. She started drinking more water, eating better, and even joining a balance class at the community center to improve her strength and coordination. Sarah realized that staying independent didn't mean avoiding help or ignoring her health. It meant taking control of it before things could spiral. She was learning to listen to her body, to treat it with the care and respect it deserved, and to take the necessary steps to ensure she could enjoy her life to the fullest. As Sarah recovered from her fall, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She wouldn't let fear or pride stand in the way of her health anymore. Instead of letting her body betray her, she would take care of it, nurturing it so that she could continue to live with strength and vitality. Number 12. Not making time for fun. Sarah sat in her quiet living room, absent-mindedly flipping through old photo albums. Each page held memories of laughter, love, and joy, times when she had been surrounded by friends and family, dancing at weddings, playing games with her children, and enjoying every fleeting moment. But now the pictures only reminded her of what was missing. She had become a woman of routine, a woman who had forgotten how to have fun. The days blurred together, a series of mundane tasks. Wake up, do chores, watch the news, go to bed. There was no spark, no lightness, no joy. Her life had become so focused on taking care of others, on retaining control, and on doing what needed to be done, that she had lost sight of what made her feel truly alive. The spontaneous laughter, the carefree moments, the times when she could simply be. Those had become distant memories. Sarah had sacrificed her joy in the name of responsibility, but now she felt as though she was missing out on the one thing that could make her feel whole again. One evening, Sarah's neighbor Maya invited her over for a movie night. Maya, always full of energy and life, had been encouraging Sarah for months to let go of her worries and just have some fun. Reluctantly, Sarah agreed, feeling unsure about stepping out of her comfort zone. When she arrived, Maya had already picked out an old comedy, a film that Sarah used to love but hadn't seen in years. As the movie started, something unexpected happened. Sarah found herself laughing. Laughing. The kind of laughter that made her belly ache and her eyes water. It was as though for the first time in ages, she allowed herself to experience true joy. The sound of her laughter filled the room, and in that moment Sarah felt lighter, more at peace with herself. She realized she had been carrying a burden of seriousness for so long, thinking that life was all about responsibility and duty. But the truth was, life needed laughter just as much as it needed work. Why laughter and fun matter as you. Age laughter is not just an expression of joy, it's a vital component of emotional and physical well-being. It has the power to reduce stress, lower cortisol levels, and improve mood. Laughter can create an emotional bond between people, and when we share a laugh with others, we open our hearts to connection and warmth. As we age, we tend to forget how crucial fun and humor are for our overall health. We get so caught up in the demands of life and our responsibilities that we forget to take time for the things that bring us joy. Laughter is also a natural immune booster, strengthening our bodies and minds. It can help with memory, improve cardiovascular health, and even alleviate pain. And perhaps most importantly, laughter makes life feel meaningful. It reminds us that we are not simply surviving, we are living. How to invite more joy into your day. Sarah's experience with Maya showed her just how easy it is to invite more joy into life. The next day, Sarah woke up with a new perspective. She decided to make time for fun, even if it felt uncomfortable at first. She started small, by watching her favorite shows, playing games with her grandchildren, and making room for spontaneous moments. Sarah began seeking out activities that brought a smile to her face, no matter how simple they seemed. She realized that fun didn't have to be extravagant or planned. Sometimes it was as simple as enjoying a cup of coffee on her porch, dancing around her kitchen to her favorite song, or laughing over a silly joke with a friend. She also made a conscious effort to surround herself with people who brought joy into her life. Maya's laughter was contagious, and Sarah knew she needed more of that in her world. She started calling her friends more often, inviting them over for game nights and finding ways to bring fun back into her daily routine. Sarah rediscovered the importance of joy. She no longer allowed the weight of responsibilities to overshadow her need for laughter and lightness. She understood now that life wasn't meant to be lived in a constant state of seriousness. The simple moments, those that made her laugh, that filled her heart with warmth, were the moments that made life truly worth living. Number 13. Not embracing change and growth. Sarah had spent so much of her life holding on to what was familiar, to the routines and habits that had served her well for years. But as time passed, she began to notice something within herself, a subtle shift. The person she once was, the one who found comfort in routine and certainty, had started to fade. In her place was a woman who was beginning to understand that change was inevitable and that it wasn't something to fear but something to embrace. At first, Sarah resisted. She had always been the person who held tight to what she knew. The idea of stepping outside her comfort zone, of trying new things or accepting new perspectives, felt overwhelming. But as she started to shed her old ways of thinking, something beautiful began to unfold. Her daughter began calling her more often, eager to share her life with Sarah. Her neighbors, once distant, stopped by to chat, and Sarah found herself laughing with them in ways she hadn't in years. Even strangers responded to her warmth with kindness. The more Sarah opened herself up to change, the more connected she felt to the world around her. She found joy in letting go of old grudges, embracing new ideas, and welcoming the unexpected. Why embracing change is essential for growth. Change is often viewed with suspicion and fear, but it is one of the most powerful tools for growth. Without change, we remain stagnant. It's through change that we learn, evolve, and discover new aspects of ourselves. Sarah's journey showed her that embracing change didn't mean losing who she was. It meant growing into a fuller, more vibrant version of herself. It meant releasing old patterns that no longer served her and being open to the new opportunities life had to offer. Aging doesn't have to mean becoming set in your ways. Embracing change as we age can bring a sense of renewal, purpose, and excitement. Sarah's heart felt lighter now that she no longer feared the unknown. She was no longer bound by the idea that she needed to have everything figured out or under control. She understood that growth was about learning, adapting, and evolving. How to embrace change. Sarah made a conscious decision to let go of her resistance to change. She stopped clinging to the past and began to embrace new experiences with open arms. Instead of fearing the future, she started looking forward to what it might bring. She explored new hobbies, tried new foods, and even picked up a new skill, something she had always wanted to learn but had put off for years. She focused on what she could control, the way she responded to change. She learned to stay curious, to remain open to new ideas, and to approach life with a sense of adventure. Sarah realized that embracing change wasn't about forcing herself to become someone she wasn't. It was about allowing herself to grow, to let go of old limitations, and to find joy in the process of discovery. In the end, Sarah discovered that aging wasn't about getting stuck in the past. It was about embracing the future with a full heart, ready to experience all the possibilities that came with it. She had learned that the key to a fulfilled life was to never stop growing, never stop learning, and always be open to the magic of change. As we wrap up today's article, I hope Sarah's journey has sparked something within you. From embracing change and learning to accept help to making room for joy and laughter in your life, there's so much we can take away from these reflections. So I want to hear from you. What have you learned so far? What is one thing you're going to bring into practice in your life starting today? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how you plan to apply these lessons to live a fuller, more connected life. If you enjoyed this article, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can continue exploring these important aspects of life and growing as a community. Thanks so much for reading, and I'll see you in the next one. Number 1. Becoming too negative or critical. Sarah never imagined she could become the type of person who was seen as negative. After all, she always prided herself on her honesty, and in her eyes, that was all she was doing, being truthful. But somewhere along the way, she began to notice a change in herself. Her words, once filled with warmth and curiosity, began to shift. Each morning she woke up with an ache or stiffness in her joints and couldn't help but grumble, lamenting the fact that age was catching up with her. She would flip on the news, and with each passing report, a sigh would escape her lips as frustration boiled over at the state of the world. She talked to her younger relatives, and more often than not, her comments were laced with judgment. "Back in my day, we had more respect for others," she'd mutter, shaking her head. At first, she didn't see it. It was just little things, small complaints here and there that seemed harmless. But over time, it became harder to ignore the quiet shifts in her life. Her conversations started to feel shorter and less genuine. Friends who had once been eager to chat now seemed to avoid deeper topics. They would steer the conversation away from anything that might lead to complaints or criticism. Even her beloved grandchildren, who used to run into her arms the moment they saw her, now seemed to pull away, always finding excuses to stay away longer. Sarah couldn't understand why this was happening. What's wrong with wanting to vent? She thought. What she didn't realize was that negativity, even when rooted in valid frustrations, is like a heavy weight on the souls of those who hear it. It saps energy, leaving people feeling drained, defeated, and worse than they did before. The truth is, it's so easy to slip into a spiral of criticism. The world around us changes at a breakneck pace, and with it, things that once felt familiar and comforting can become alienating. Our bodies start to betray us, and tasks that once felt simple now feel like monumental challenges. Shopping, driving, learning to use new technology. Everything feels like it requires more effort than it used to. And yes, it's natural to vent and express frustration. Life is frustrating after all. But when that frustration becomes the default, when negativity starts to dominate our interactions, it subtly but powerfully drives people away. It's an exhausting cycle, and no one is immune to it. It feels like a small crack at first, but over time it grows, making it harder for people to connect and for joy to thrive. How to turn this around? The key to shifting this negativity lies in consciously choosing how to engage with the world. It's about finding the positive even on the hardest days. Start your conversations with something light, something uplifting. Imagine if Sarah began her day by saying, "I woke up feeling so much better today," or "Did you see that gorgeous sunset last night?" Or maybe, "I just read something that made me think." When we bring positive energy into a room, it can be like turning on a light in a dark space. People are naturally drawn to that light, and they stay longer in its warmth. Setting a limit for complaints is also crucial. Permitting yourself to express frustration, but only for a set amount of time, can help you avoid spiraling into a negativity vortex. 2 minutes of venting, followed by a shift towards something constructive. Instead of rejecting the new, unfamiliar, and seemingly frivolous, try being curious. When your grandchild talks about a new app or trend, instead of dismissing it with a sigh, ask, "Tell me more about that. What makes it so fun?" It's about changing the lens through which you see the world, fostering curiosity instead of critique, understanding instead of judgment. Sarah had no idea how much her negativity was affecting her until she made a conscious effort to change. She started leading her conversations with positivity, like a small but deliberate step toward breaking the pattern. To her surprise, people started responding differently. Her friends lingered longer, willing to share more with her. Her grandkids, who had once kept their distance, came back with eager smiles. Slowly, the connection she thought she'd lost began to return. Her heart, once clouded by negativity, began to feel lighter, and she realized something profound. The effort to shift her mindset wasn't just about changing her relationships. It was about rediscovering the joy of life itself. She learned that positivity is a gift, not only for others but for herself too. It doesn't just lift the spirits of those around us. It transforms our hearts and souls, opening doors to healing, connection, and a renewed sense of wonder. Number 2. Ignoring personal hygiene and appearance. Sarah once lived for the thrill of getting dressed up, the feeling of slipping into her favorite colorful blouse and the subtle yet signature scent of her perfume that clung to her as she moved. Every detail was intentional. Her hair was always styled just right, and her clothes were chosen with care to reflect her personality and mood. It wasn't about impressing others. It was about honoring herself and showing the world the vibrant, confident woman she was. But as time passed, something shifted in Sarah. At first, it was just small changes, skipping a few makeup applications here and there, canceling hair appointments, and opting for looser, more comfortable clothes that offered no frills and no effort. And yet, deep down, she justified it. Why bother? She'd think to herself. I'm not trying to impress anyone anymore. And so, day after day, Sarah fell into a routine of neglect. She would stay in her house clothes, ones she had once reserved for lazy Sundays, and rarely, if ever, looked in the mirror. Her days became longer, as did the time between showers. She convinced herself it didn't matter. She told herself it was fine, that the world had moved on and that her appearance wasn't worth the energy. But deep within, there was a whisper, a nagging feeling that something was slipping away, that something wasn't right. It was subtle at first, but then it hit her more undeniably. She noticed the shift in how people treated her. Strangers who once admired her bright smile and chic outfits no longer glanced her way. She couldn't remember the last time someone had complimented her, not even out of politeness. Her friends, who once asked her to join them for dinners, events, or spontaneous outings, stopped inviting her. Her phone grew quieter, and the loneliness began to seep in. It wasn't just the absence of invitations, it was the feeling of invisibility. Sarah found herself looking at old photos of herself, wondering where that radiant, confident woman had gone. It was as if she was looking at a stranger, a woman she barely recognized, lost somewhere in the shadows of time. What Sarah didn't realize was how much her appearance mattered, not just to others, but to herself. How she presented herself was a direct reflection of how she felt inside. The way we take care of our appearance isn't about vanity. It's about acknowledging our worth, about telling the world and ourselves that we still care, that we still have the strength and desire to engage with life fully. Personal hygiene, grooming, and dressing up are acts of self-respect. They are the outward signs of an inner commitment to stay engaged with the world. When we neglect ourselves, we inadvertently tell the universe that we're withdrawing, that we no longer deserve the effort of self-love. How to turn this around? Sarah needed to remember something fundamental. Small actions matter. The way to begin the journey back to herself wasn't about drastic changes, but about making small, deliberate efforts to take care of herself. It started with something as simple as getting dressed every day, even if she had no plans to leave the house. It didn't have to be anything elaborate. just something clean, comfortable, and well-fitting. When you wear something that makes you feel good, it's like a little spark of positivity that can ignite your entire mood. It's a simple but powerful act that says, "I'm worth the effort today." Sarah also began to prioritize her hygiene once again, carving out time for a warm shower, trimming her nails, and indulging in small acts of self-care like moisturizing her skin and brushing her hair. These tiny acts weren't just about staying physically clean. They were about sending a message to her inner self. I matter. I am worth the time. These rituals, small as they seemed, were a way of reaffirming her connection with herself, of reminding her that she was still here and still worthy of love, especially her own. She rediscovered the power of color and the effect it had on her spirit. Sarah began to wear colors that made her feel alive, bright, vibrant hues that made her feel energized, like she was walking in sunlight. She even started adding little accessories, a favorite watch, a simple pair of earrings, or just a spritz of her favorite perfume. It was as if these small touches brought back a sense of joy, reminding her of the woman she used to be and still is, deep down. And it worked. Slowly but surely, Sarah felt a shift. When she brushed her hair, slipped on a blouse she loved, and dabbed on a bit of lipstick, she began to notice the world around her respond. She walked into rooms with her head held a little higher, and suddenly, people smiled at her again. She felt lighter, brighter, more confident, and most importantly, like herself again. The woman who had once loved getting dressed up was no longer lost. She was reclaiming herself, piece by piece, one small, loving action at a time. Your appearance isn't just how others perceive you. It's a reflection of how you feel inside. When you take the time to care for yourself, to show up for yourself, you're telling the world, and more importantly, you're telling yourself, that you're still alive, still vibrant, and still worthy of all the good things life has to offer. And that is a truth that can transform the way you see yourself and how the world sees you in return. Number 3. Becoming stubborn and resistant to change. Sarah had always been a creature of habit. She reveled in the comfort of her routines, the familiar rhythms of life that had worked for decades. She believed that what had worked in the past was good enough, and there was no need to change something that had brought her so much stability. Change, in her eyes, was unnecessary and even intrusive. She'd often scoff at the idea of learning anything new, especially when it came to technology. "I don't need to learn all that," she'd say, her voice dismissive as she waved off her kids' and grandkids' attempts to introduce her to the world of text messages. "If they want to talk to me, they can call." But as time passed, the phone calls became less frequent. It wasn't as if her family didn't care. Oh, they cared deeply. But the way they communicated had evolved. They no longer called as often. Instead, they sent messages in group chats, exchanged pictures and funny videos, and even sent birthday reminders, all things that Sarah refused to engage with. She watched as the world around her seemed to move on, leaving her behind in a quiet, invisible isolation. Sarah never realized how much she was missing until the day her heart sank as she scrolled through a conversation thread and saw all the moments she had never been a part of. The precious photos of her great-grandkids, the playful banter, the quick check-ins that felt like warm hugs through a screen. It wasn't just about technology. It was about her connections to the people she loved slipping through her fingers like sand. The painful truth, though, is that stubbornness, as innocent as it may seem, can lead to isolation. We can easily fall into the trap of thinking that change isn't necessary, that the way we've lived for years, even decades, is the right way, the only way. But in reality, refusing to adapt, whether it's resisting new technology, avoiding new ways of doing things, or stubbornly clinging to old habits, can push the ones we love away without us even realizing it. We lose touch with the world, and, most heartbreakingly, with the people who matter the most to us. How to stay open to change. It's time to say, "I'll try," instead of, "I don't need that." Just those 3 little words, "I'll try," can make all the difference in the world. It keeps your heart and mind open. It keeps you sharp, and it creates opportunities for new, beautiful experiences. Don't shut things down before you give them a chance. Ask for help, and allow it to become a moment of bonding. Invite your kids or grandkids into your world and let them teach you something new. You'll be amazed at how learning together creates not just new skills but memories that you'll treasure forever. Start small. Embrace tiny changes first. You don't have to transform overnight or become a tech expert at the drop of a hat. Instead, begin with small, simple adjustments. A quick text here, a new hobby there, or even watching a show that your grandkids adore. It's these little acts that will help you stay connected to the world around you, bridging the gap between generations and keeping your heart full. When Sarah finally decided to let her granddaughter teach her how to send a text message, she was shocked by how easy it was. But more than that, she was overwhelmed with gratitude as she realized what she had been missing all along. She saw pictures of her great-grandkids' first steps, received jokes that made her laugh out loud, and got those precious little check-ins that filled her heart. By letting go of her resistance, Sarah discovered something far more precious than any technological gadget, a deeper, richer connection with the people she loved most. And that is the real gift that comes with change. It's not just about adapting to new ways. It's about keeping the door to your heart open, making sure that the bonds we cherish never fade away. Number 4. Hoarding and refusing to let go of clutter. Sarah had always been deeply sentimental, a woman who saw value in everything. Her home was a reflection of her memories. Old birthday cards from loved ones she hadn't seen in years, piles of newspapers she'd once meant to read but never had the time to, clothes she hadn't worn in ages but kept just in case. Each item had a story, a personal connection that made it almost impossible for her to part with. What was once a cozy haven full of cherished mementos slowly became an overwhelming sea of things she rarely used, but couldn't bear to let go of. At first, Sarah didn't see any harm in it. "Everything here has value," she'd say with conviction. "I might need it one day." But what she failed to realize was that the clutter was slowly taking control of her life. It was more than just piles of old books and forgotten trinkets. It was stress, anxiety, and a sense of being suffocated by the weight of things she didn't need. Her home, once warm and inviting, began to feel like a maze. Navigating from room to room became a challenge, and cleaning felt impossible. Even inviting guests over started to seem like an overwhelming task. Her daughter, with a gentle and loving voice, suggested that Sarah consider letting go of a few items, but Sarah's resistance was strong. "What if I need them later?" she would say, a deep fear settling in her heart at the thought of letting go of anything. She clung to the past through the things she kept, not realizing that the very items she held on to were preventing her from embracing the present and all the beautiful opportunities it had to offer. Clutter isn't just about filling up physical space. It also fills up your mind. It weighs you down, causing stress and making everyday life harder than it needs to be. The emotional attachment to things can keep you tethered to moments that no longer serve you, preventing you from moving forward. Letting go can feel like losing part of yourself, but in reality, it's about freeing yourself from the past so you can fully embrace the future. How to break free from clutter. The journey to freedom starts small. One drawer, one box, one shelf at a time. Don't try to tackle everything at once. That can feel overwhelming and discouraging. Break it down into manageable chunks. Begin by asking yourself, do I use this? Does it bring me joy or add value to my life? If the answer is no, let it go. Donate the items that still have life in them. Recycle what can no longer serve a purpose, and pass on those treasures to family members who will cherish them. Letting go isn't about erasing memories. It's about honoring the ones that truly matter by making space for new ones. Turn decluttering into a daily habit. Set a goal to part with one item every day, and before you know it, you'll see a noticeable transformation. Even though the process might feel slow at first, each step you take will bring you closer to a more peaceful, organized life. Consider the bigger picture. Cluttered spaces are more than just an eyesore. They can also be hazardous. Clutter increases the risk of trips, falls, and accidents. A safe, uncluttered home fosters peace of mind. A home should be a sanctuary, a place where you feel comfortable, relaxed, and free from the stress of unnecessary things. When Sarah finally decided to start decluttering, the change was nothing short of profound. She began with small steps, parting with clothes she hadn't worn in years, recycling outdated magazines and organizing the space around her. As she cleared away the excess, she was amazed at how much lighter and freer she felt. Her home transformed from a chaotic collection of memories to a peaceful sanctuary where she could finally breathe. She felt a sense of renewal, not just in her space but in her heart. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt comfortable, inviting friends over again, without the fear of judgment or the weight of disorganization holding her back. Letting go of clutter wasn't about losing things. It was about making room for the things that truly matter, for a simpler, more peaceful, and more fulfilling life. In the end, decluttering wasn't just about getting rid of stuff. It was about clearing the path to a better future. Sarah's decision to let go of what no longer served her was an act of self-love, a step toward embracing a life filled with purpose, freedom, and joy. And that, in itself, was the greatest gift she could give herself. Number 5. Losing patience with others too quickly. Sarah had always prided herself on being a calm, understanding person. She never imagined herself as someone prone to impatience. After all, she had spent most of her life practicing patience, learning to embrace the chaos and challenges of everyday life with a smile. But lately, something inside her was changing. Little things, insignificant at first, began to irk her in ways they never had before. There was an undercurrent of frustration that seemed to simmer beneath the surface, and no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, it bubbled up more often than she'd like to admit. One ordinary afternoon, Sarah found herself standing in line at the grocery store, waiting for the young cashier to finish bagging her groceries. He was slow, so slow that Sarah could feel the weight of the seconds dragging on. His hands were unsteady as he fumbled with the bags, clearly a bit overwhelmed by the task. Sarah's heart raced with annoyance. "Can't you move a little faster?" she muttered under her breath, her impatience getting the better of her. It felt like the world was moving at a crawl, and she just wanted to get out of there and move on with her day. But then something caught her eye. The cashier, suddenly aware of her impatience, looked down at the counter, his face flushing with embarrassment. That's when Sarah saw it, the subtle tremor in his hands, the nervousness in his posture. He was young, probably new at the job and struggling with the pressure of trying to do everything right. That moment was a gut punch. It hit her all at once. She had become the very person she once despised, the one who let impatience dictate their actions, the one who snapped at people without taking a moment to consider their situation. How had she become so quick to judge, so slow to show kindness? As we get older, it becomes easier to lose patience with others. The little annoyances that used to roll off our backs suddenly feel magnified. Our days, once full of calm, start to feel crowded with frustrations. We become less tolerant, more rigid, and less willing to bend with the flow of life. And yet, when we act out of frustration, we're not only harming the people around us, but ourselves as well. That pent-up anger and impatience only raise our stress levels, draining us emotionally. And for what? A few seconds shaved off a line at the grocery store? Is that worth it? So, how can we stay patient and kind in a world that constantly tests our limits? It starts with pausing, just pausing before reacting. It's a small but powerful tool. When you feel that familiar spark of irritation creeping in, take a deep breath, close your eyes for a moment, and ask yourself, is this worth getting upset over? Remind yourself that the slow driver in front of you might be someone's grandfather trying his best. The distracted cashier might be a college student working long hours to pay their tuition. We all carry invisible burdens. If we could just open our hearts to the humanity behind the actions of others, it might transform our frustration into empathy. Look for small moments throughout your day to practice kindness. Instead of letting your irritation take the wheel, choose gentleness, a smile, a soft word of encouragement. A simple "take your time" can make someone feel seen, heard, and appreciated. It's amazing how such small gestures can shift the energy in a space, turning irritation into connection. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all need? More connection, more kindness, more understanding. Sarah made a promise to herself that day. The next time she went to the store, she would be different. She would slow down, both literally and figuratively. When she reached the same young cashier again, she smiled at him genuinely and said, "You're doing a great job." His face lit up, his eyes filled with gratitude. In that simple exchange, Sarah realized something important. Kindness doesn't just make someone else's day, it transforms your own as well. It lifts you, lightens your soul, and makes life feel just a little bit easier. And perhaps that's the true power of patience, not just in making others feel better, but in making ourselves better too. Number 6. Overtaking and not listening. Sarah had always been the life of the conversation. She had an endless supply of stories, a wealth of advice and memories that she couldn't wait to relive. Talking was her way of connecting, her way of feeling loved and valued. But over time, something changed. Sarah began to notice that her daughter, the person she cherished most in the world, wasn't calling as often. And when they did speak, the conversations felt rushed, almost as if her daughter was anxious to get off the phone. Sarah's heart ached. Was something wrong? She couldn't help but ask, "Is everything okay? You don't call as much anymore." There was a long, uncomfortable pause before her daughter's soft voice finally came through the receiver. "Mom, I love talking to you, but sometimes I don't feel heard. It's like our calls are all about you and I never get to share what's on my mind." Sarah felt as though the wind had been knocked out of her. Shocked, it didn't even begin to cover how she felt. She had no idea how often she had dominated their conversations, how frequently she had interrupted with her own experiences, how often she had eagerly pushed her advice before her daughter could even finish her sentence. How had it gotten this way? Had she unknowingly pushed her daughter away? It's easy, isn't it? We fall into this trap as we age. We accumulate a lifetime of wisdom, and all we want is to pass it on, to share what we've learned and to give advice we believe might help. But in doing so, we forget something crucial: listening. We forget how important it is to simply hear the other person. We forget that a relationship is a two-way street, and when we monopolize the conversation, we risk losing the very connection we cherish most. Sarah realized that her actions, no matter how well-intentioned, had created a wall between her and her daughter. She had been so focused on filling the silence with her own words that she hadn't noticed the silent withdrawal on the other side of the line, her daughter's hesitation to talk, the quieter responses, the sudden longing for the conversation to end. All of it made sense now, so Sarah decided to make a change. The next time her daughter called, she took a deep breath, set aside her thoughts, and truly listened. She asked questions, ones that invited her daughter to open up and not just respond. "What's been the best part of your week?" she asked, genuinely wanting to know, not just out of habit. Sarah didn't rush in with advice. She didn't interject with her own story. Instead, she gave her daughter the space to express herself fully, to share her joys, her worries, her triumphs, and her struggles. And as Sarah did this, she felt a shift, a deep, emotional shift. The connection they had once had seemed to return, stronger and more meaningful than before. Sarah had learned something invaluable. The best conversations aren't about talking more. They're about listening better, listening with your heart, not just your ears. When we listen deeply, when we make the other person feel truly heard, we create a space for connection that words alone cannot build. So if you find yourself talking more than listening, take a step back. Ask yourself, when was the last time I truly listened? When was the last time I let the other person speak without rushing to interrupt or offer advice? And most importantly, when was the last time I listened with my whole heart? The answers might surprise you, but the change it brings could transform your relationships forever. Number 7. Pushing people away. Instead of asking for help, Sarah had always taken great pride in her independence. For as long as she could remember, she had been the one to take care of everyone around her. She raised her children with an unwavering commitment, handled every detail of her household, and even helped her neighbors with anything they needed. She was the pillar of strength, the person others turned to, and for a long time that felt like the greatest achievement of her life. But as the years passed, the weight of life became heavier. Simple tasks that once felt effortless began to take a toll on her body. One afternoon, as she struggled to lift a heavy grocery bag from her car, she felt a wave of exhaustion she couldn't ignore. A young man walked by, and with a gentle smile he offered, "Need a hand with that?" Sarah, though grateful for the offer, felt a surge of resistance. She didn't want to admit that she needed help. She was Sarah, after all, the strong one, the one who never asked for assistance. "No, thank you," she said, forcing a smile as she struggled to drag the bag toward the door. The weight of the bag felt more than just physical. It symbolized something deeper. Every step she took, her back ached, but what hurt even more was the sense of isolation creeping in. She had just rejected kindness. She had pushed someone away who only wanted to help, and in doing so, she pushed herself further into loneliness. That night, Sarah found herself in tears. It wasn't just the pain in her body, it was the pain in her heart. She realized in a raw moment of clarity that refusing help wasn't a sign of strength. It was a sign of fear of being seen as weak. But in her refusal, she had only created a greater distance between herself and others. She had allowed pride to replace connection. Why? Asking for help is a strength. Asking for help doesn't diminish you. It doesn't make you weak or a burden. It makes you human. It allows others to show their care for you. People genuinely want to help, and when you refuse, you not only deny yourself the support you deserve, but you also deny them the joy of giving. It's a beautiful cycle. When you allow someone to lend a hand, you are allowing them to connect with you, to share a moment of kindness. You are reminding them that their presence matters. We are all part of a community, and that community thrives on mutual support. Imagine if no one ever needed your help. Imagine how unimportant you would feel. Life is not meant to be lived in isolation. Offering and receiving help creates an unspoken bond, a connection that transcends words. It reminds us that we are not alone. How to change the habit. The next time someone offers help, resist the urge to turn them down out of pride. Instead, try something different. "Yes, that would be great, thank you." It's as simple as that. When you need help, ask for it. Be open. Don't wait until you're at the breaking point. Ask, "Would you mind giving me a hand with this?" And so, Sarah took a deep breath and decided to change. The next time she saw the young man at the store, she smiled warmly. "Actually," she said, "I could use a little help today." The man's face lit up, and as he grabbed her bag, Sarah felt something shift in her heart. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly connected. In that small moment, she realized the power of asking for help. It wasn't just about making life easier. It was about allowing love and care to flow into her life once again. Number 8. Being too frugal to enjoy. Sarah had always been careful with her money, perhaps a little too careful. She had learned early in life the value of saving, of being frugal, and of planning for the future. For years, she clipped coupons, skipped vacations, and hesitated before making any purchase that wasn't necessary. Even though she had a comfortable nest egg saved for the future, she couldn't shake the nagging worry. What if something unexpected happens? What if I run out of money one day? The fear of running out, of not having enough, held her back from truly enjoying life. Her life had become a series of sacrifices, all for a future that never seemed to arrive. Then one day, her best friend Maya invited her on a weekend getaway to the countryside. "Come on, Sarah, let's go. It'll be fun. We'll explore, eat good food, and just relax for a couple of days," Maya said, her excitement palpable. Sarah's first instinct was to decline. Spending money on travel, staying in a nice place, eating out, at restaurants, she could think of a dozen reasons not to go. But deep down, a voice inside whispered, When was the last time I treated myself? When was the last time I did something just for fun? Just for me? The thought lingered in her mind, even as she made excuses. Sarah had spent so many years saving for one day. But what if that day never came? What if she spent her entire life hoarding money only to realize, too late, that she had never truly lived? Why enjoying your money matters while being financially responsible is undoubtedly important. Life isn't just about saving, it's about living. It's about making memories, experiencing joy, and feeling the fullness of life. Research shows that spending money on experiences, traveling, going to concerts, exploring new hobbies, creates lasting happiness, while material possessions lose their luster over time. The truth is that experiences enrich our souls in ways that things simply cannot. Sarah had worked hard for this stage of life. She had sacrificed so much for her family and her future, and now it was time to enjoy it. Money is meant to support our happiness, not just sit in a bank account. Security is important, but so is fulfillment. We need to find a balance between saving for the future and living fully in the present. What good is it to have wealth if we can't enjoy it while we're still here to savor it? How to change the habit. It's okay to spend money on things that bring you joy. Allow yourself to indulge in a nice dinner. Take a weekend getaway or invest in a new hobby that excites you. Set aside a portion of your savings specifically for experiences that will nourish your spirit. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Life doesn't wait, and neither should you. The time to enjoy yourself is now. Sarah finally said yes to that weekend trip with Maya, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she laughed freely. They explored, they ate delicious food, and they talked for hours. As the weekend came to a close, Sarah watched the sunset with Maya and realized that this was exactly what she had been saving for all along. These moments, these experiences, these bursts of joy. She had spent so many years worrying about the future that she had forgotten how to live in the present. The joy Sarah felt during those 2 days reminded her of something she had forgotten. Life isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. And sometimes, thriving means treating yourself, saying yes to joy, and allowing yourself the pleasure of living fully in the moment.